Now, finally, I want to make this a little bit more spiritual, obviously. And I want to read you the final story. It's going to take 2-3 minutes. And it really summarizes, once we understand this intellectual gymnastics, it has to profoundly affect our hearts. Because when you study the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah talks about man, life and the universe and the material physical world and the cosmos and the creatures, these aspects of His rububiyyah, these aspects of His creative power are there for us to conclude what? To conclude al-ibadah, to conclude that Allah deserves worship. This is so important for us to understand. That from understanding the creative power, the creative divine power in the universe, it has to now make us understand Allah's exclusivity concerning His divinity. Allah's exclusivity concerning His divinity, that He deserves all worship. This is important. If you don't get this at the end, what I've said is rubbish. What I've said is trash. You have to understand that logical link. The minute we understand Allah is a self-evident truth, the minute we understand that Allah is the explanation for everything dependent, He's an independent being and eternal. The minute you understand this, therefore, you should worship Him. Why? Because everything that you do is dependent on whom? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, He deserves our gratitude. And gratitude is an expression of worship. Study the Quran. Surah Al-Fatiha. The 7 verses, the mother of the book. The ulama say Surah Al-Fatiha explains the whole of the Quran. What is the pillar of the Quran? Tawheed. Singling out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for worship. And what's the first line of Surah Al-Fatiha? What does Allah say? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All perfect, exclusive gratitude belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Why? Well, let's read this story that links to the argument I've just spoken about. And this story is by Gay Eaton. One day, I set out to tend my fields, accompanied by my little dog, sworn enemy of the monkeys which ravaged the plantations. It was the season of the great heat. My dog and I were so hot that we could scarcely breathe. I began to think that one or other of us would soon fall in a faint. Then, thank God, I saw a tiaki tree, the branches of which presented a vault of refreshing greenery. My dog gave little cries of joy and turned towards this blessed shade. When he had reached the shade, instead of staying where he was, he came back to me, his tongue out. Seeing how his flanks were palpitating, I realized how completely exhausted he was. I walked towards the shade. My dog was full of joy. Then, for a moment, I pretended to continue on my way. The poor beast groaned plaintively, but followed me nonetheless, his tail between his legs. He was obviously in despair, but determined to follow me, whatever might come of it. This fidelity moved me profoundly. How could one fully appreciate the readiness of this animal to follow me, even to death, although he was under no constraint to do so? He was devoted to me, as I said to myself, because he regards me as his master, so he risks his life simply to stay beside me. Oh my Lord, I cried, heal my troubled soul, my fidelity like that of this being whom I call contemptuously a dog. Give me, as you have given him, the strength to master my life, so that I may accomplish your will and follow without asking, where am I going? The path upon which you guide me. I am not the creator of this dog, yet he follows me in docility at the cost of 1,000 sufferings. It is you, Lord, who has gifted him with this virtue. Give, O my Lord, to all who ask of it, you as I do, the virtue of love and the courage of charity. Then I retraced my steps and took refuge in the shade. Full of joy, my little companion lay down facing me so that his eyes were turned to mine, as though he wished to speak seriously to me. Brothers and sisters and friends, our master is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But do we act as the dog acts to its own owner that it considers its master? The dog and the owner and everything else is dependent solely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore our whole being should be attached to Allah and be grateful to Him. And this gratitude is not Him giving you a house. And this gratitude is not Him giving you a car or more children. These are bonuses. We have become so ungrateful that we think only to be grateful if I pass my exams. I'm only grateful if He gives me food. I'm only grateful if He gives me a little bit more money. I'm only grateful if He gives me a house and a wife and a child. This is a bonus. This is a bonus. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, this is a bonus. Reflect on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah says you cannot enumerate, you cannot count the blessings of Allah. You cannot count them. And I wanted to find an example for people who are sad, suffering, or even happy. For everybody. And what is this blessing? It's life itself. It's so priceless and precious. We don't own it. We don't earn it. We don't deserve it. But we receive every moment of our existence for free. And it's priceless. We receive this gift of life. That even if you were a multi-billionaire and you had 10 minutes left to live, and if I said to you, give me all of your wealth for 10 more years, you will give me all of your wealth. Ask any millionaire who's blind. They would say, I'll give you all my wealth just to see my mother. We're ungrateful people. We are become ungrateful. And the basis of our life from a physical point of view is the heartbeat. This heartbeat, brothers and sisters, is the asbab, is the sabab, is the cause that Allah has created in order to keep us alive. Your heartbeat, that you're not even conscious of. Just listen to your heartbeat. Tell it to stop, it won't stop. Tell it to go faster, it won't go faster. It's independent of your conscious control. If this heartbeat were to stop, you won't have life anymore. It's finished. If I said to you, you had 100 heartbeats left, and in order to get another 1,000 heartbeats, you give me £1 million, you would do whatever it takes to find that money. Here's the challenge from the Quran. You cannot enumerate, count Allah's blessings. And I dare you, try and compete with this challenge. Count all the heartbeats you've had so far. It's physically impossible. For the first 3 years, you don't even know how to count. You got 3 years backlog. When you're sleeping, you have backlog. In actual fact, it is physically impossible for a human being to count and enumerate every single heartbeat they'll have in their lifetime. So it's true. You can never count the blessings of Allah. And this is the one small blessing which is the physical reason that Allah has given us for your own life and existence. The heartbeat. Imagine anything else. And that's why I say to my family, anything above a heartbeat is a bonus. Uqsum billah, by Allah, if you had this mindset, you would never be sad. The believer would never be sad if they had this mindset. They would always wake up and be grateful for life. Because it's not theirs, it's a gift. They would always be grateful for this heartbeat that they can't even count.